Hey guys.
Hi, it's Sasha here, co-founder, CEO of Coding Rooms.
Hi, it's Angela from Coding Rooms. And yeah, thanks for joining us again on our weekly podcast. This is episode 2. And, today we have a lot of interesting topics to be discussed. First, we're going to talk about some product updates that we have this week. And then we're going to get into some interesting topics about Zoom fatigue, just because, with the current situation in the world, and just some updates also on just vaccine trials. We're kind of in this for the long haul, and I think everyone's getting kind of tired with Zoom. So kind of talking about topics on that. And then we're going to go into some interesting discussions related to student engagement metrics in class as well, how effective this sort of remote learning process is working, and also lastly, just closing on some thought of the week, which is what we do every week.
Awesome. Cool. So as always, I'm going to get started with the product updates. So from our side, the first thing to note is now you're able to upload files directly into your workspace on Coding Rooms. So next to where you used to be able to download, now you can upload from your file system and create it as a new file, or upload that to an existing file. So it's a really easy way for instructors and students to carry over code locally between lessons, as well as doing manual Git integration, for example. And also if you're uploading data sets, working with Python, doing charts or whatever, you're able to easily upload that without having to do a bunch of copy paste work back and forth between tabs. The next big thing that we've got queued up to release this week is a huge set of performance updates. So that will particularly affect instructors. So previously, depending on what browser you're using and how much your code your students have and your internet connection, it could take anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds sometimes to load a full page of students, to load all their coding environments. And we have an update that's in testing right now that will roughly half that for a lot of people who are using Chrome. We have a lot of specific optimizations that we're doing for Chrome, and we look forward to hearing all of our users' feedback on how that impacts lag time. And it should also help to reduce CPU usage, especially if you're doing a lot of switching between workspaces, which we know a lot of our instructors are doing. And the other thing that you all will notice is that if you go to codingrooms.com now, you have a completely new web page. So actually over the past couple weeks, we've had in development a new landing page, a new blog, and a handful of other About Us pages and pricing pages, and all of that went live today ahead of our podcast. So I hope that you all enjoy these new features that we've released and that are upcoming this week. And with that, I'll hand it over to Angela to talk more about Zoom.
Yeah, so, a lot of exciting things happening with our website, and as we, get acquainted with this new, we have a lot of content lined up as well, so stay tuned to our website. And so the topic that we really wanted to discuss this week was more so about, how can we get rid of Zoom fatigue? I think with a lot of students and teachers even nowadays, they're getting kind of tired with this sort of remote learning structure. Teachers feel like they're talking to a wall because they're not getting enough student feedback in the class, and then students don't really feel like engaging because, to be frank, you're not really interacting with classmates as much, and also not many teachers, I think, really require their students to turn on their video camera. At least that's from what I've been hearing with some of my friends and stuff. I don't think that's like really a thing. Maybe just to take attendance at first, and then maybe they'll turn their video on, but I don't think they do that often. With some current news that we're seeing is officials are advising on shortening lessons because of attention span issues. So what are your thoughts on that? It's not a long-term solution. I feel like it's...
Yeah, well, the sort of alternative, right, if you're shortening your lecture time, it's that you're bringing in some kind of asynchronous learn by doing tasks, right? And ultimately that's one of our big focal areas with Coding Rooms, is ensuring that students actually have a place to work and be engaged during class. And it seems like with Zoom, a lot of the effort is around, okay, how do we get out of Zoom as quickly as we can? Once the lesson has been delivered, can we go somewhere else? And yeah, of course, it's not a long-term solution. It's an immediate sort of patch on a larger problem.
Yeah, because especially as we move forward in this kind of long haul of just being in it, I mean, I don't think anyone really wants to hear like when coronavirus is going to end. You know, everyone is hoping for that vaccine to come.
Yeah.
But you know, with the recent news, like with AstraZeneca, with, you know, Johnson & Johnson stopping their trials, it's not that positive. At least it's not giving the public any positive news. You know, even Bill Gates has said that, you know, the only way that we can really look forward to it ending or, you know, with herd immunization in early 2022 is if we have a large-scale approved vaccine first quarter of 2021, which is only a few months away. And I don't know what the public's opinion is. I mean, you guys can send us your feedback on what your thoughts on this are, but at least I just, you know, I am getting kind of dejected about this, but at the same time, you know, really trying to adapt to this in the long term, because we are looking forward towards just maybe another year of this, whatever this is, you know.
Of remote learning.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a you know, again, sort of from a product perspective, this is a bigger picture mindset change that I think is happening, you know, in education as we speak. You know, we deal mostly at the university level, although some of the K-12 level. The idea of a remote 2021 spring, back in spring of 2020, was almost it was say kind of a borderline idea, right? I mean, no one really believed that we'd have even a fall remote semester, but now for a lot of universities, the decisions have already been made that we're going to have a remote spring semester.
Yeah, definitely.
And the idea that what I like to call these sort of long tail implications of COVID, for example, visa processing, is actually even more complicated issue, because all of a sudden now, let's say that we're able to meet again in class without social distancing, without masks, big group gatherings of folks who are all vaccinated. What if people still can't get visas?
Yeah.
And that has a big, you know, what we're seeing is, okay, we're at some point we will have more in person, right? And people will be able to take their masks off. But maybe there will be a lot of people who will be joining remotely.
I think it's going to be like some sort of hybrid classrooms that we're starting to see. You know, I think with certain universities, as they try to ease back in-person teaching, it's like 25% of the class can be in class, whereas the other 75% still has to join through a Zoom call. So I don't know how they filter that. Like, do you have to, like, is it a poll, like, oh, if you really want to get that 25% spot, you're going to have to click into a form immediately and join the class? I don't know how they're doing it. There must be different ways, or a randomizer. But yeah, it just doesn't seem so fair, especially given the fact that I think a lot of schools have kept their tuition, right? And I think, you know, compared to if they're slowly easing into that hybrid plan, you know, some people are going to have conversations like, hey, is it really fair that I wasn't chosen to be in person and that I'm still remote, that I'm paying the same amount as someone who gets that in-person teaching?
Certainly.
And, you know, I think another thing that we have to keep in mind as well is that I think the Zoom fatigue itself comes from the fact that, you know, with, like, although you're joining through video, you're still very siloed into your own, like, just desktop screen. You know, it's like you're connected but not, and also it's just, you don't, it's like the lack of nonverbal communication, right?
Yeah.
Like seeing the teacher's expression, or working, like actually having that physical interaction with your classmates and team projects. Like, I don't think people really understand how much that we pick up on these nonverbal cues on a daily basis.
Yeah. And that's even more challenging when you're working on something like computer programming, because so much of it is outside of what is traditionally a video or audio medium, right? I mean, if you're just having a seminar, for example, it's easier to overcome or overlook some of these issues around the interaction model. But if you're writing code, I mean, that's a fundamentally different set of requirements that you need to have, and the idea that people are just going to screen share or whatever. I mean, it's just untenable when you have a large group of people, right, who are meeting, and at the lowest level, take pair programming for example. Even that is challenging to run remotely. So now all of a sudden you want to say we're going to have 30 people coding remotely. I mean, that's a completely different a software framework and approach that you need to have.
Yeah, but it's also raising the question, like, were we even doing it right to begin with, right? I mean, I think, what were we doing before with coding classes and programming classes? We have, a lecture and then a lab. But even labs, I mean, there's only 1 or 2 TAs max that can, like, walk around the classroom and help each person individually. And I feel like a lot of students just sit there waiting for help.
Yeah.
And they really need it because maybe they've already spent a few hours trying to debug their code or whatever issue they came into, and they're just sitting there waiting. So I think just this thing and this whole coronavirus has definitely derailed everyone's lives. But, it could be beneficial because it's really taking us back to, like, what is making education more efficient, right?
Yep.
Is it sitting there waiting for someone to come by and then spending 5-10 minutes just to figure out exactly what line, exactly what syntax, like very nitpicky stuff. I mean, I think coding is very, detail oriented. So,
exactly.
Yeah, it's raising a lot of these questions. And I think the no classmate interaction as well is very hard on students, especially freshmen, because I mean, I think you're in a new community, you want to make friends. How do you do that through I mean, I right? Like, I think it's like joining a video call it's so weird. I think people are less inclined to turn on their video because think about it in real life. You don't stare at someone blankly. True. Like, it's unnatural and we're not used to it. So it's a lot of getting used to.
Yeah. And definitely, I mean, we sort of know this empirically, right? I mean, a lot of the actual learning value doesn't necessarily come from a teacher or from a direct teacher-student interaction, right? A lot of that is student to student, and that's something that, broadly speaking, again, with the current Zoom interaction model, is not something that's happening.
Yeah, definitely. I think as we move forward into just this being a long-term issue, I mean, especially with just all this news about, vaccine trials aren't necessarily as positive as we expected. Yeah. We're looking towards another year of this. So it's really about how do we boost student engagement, right? I think a lot of parents, I think college level, sure. I mean, you're paying a lot of tuition, but even the younger K-12 schools, right? Yeah. They really want to make sure that children are actually growing and tapping their areas of the brain, so they're actually growing their knowledge intellectually and being prepared for college. And I think with this remote learning styles, it kind of jeopardizes a lot of parents' expectations on what their kids should be doing in class, right? I mean, how do we even measure that to begin with, like engagement?
Yeah, and it's very unfortunate, right? I mean, we're looking at almost a generation of folks, right, who are really losing out on that, and that's why it's imperative, right, to not just provide short-term patches, but to actually create new methodologies that work online, right? And that's, of course, something that we're deeply involved with at Coding Rooms, because it's not going to be easy to digest and to tackle the 2 years of fourth graders who can't read.
Yeah, that's definitely, it's the basic necessities. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
So it's just like, I mean, certain things that we're starting to see in classrooms as well is, more interactive, more reward-based kind of teaching, which, arguably, does it work, does not work. I think, I would say collegiate level, I think, in colleges and stuff, what I typically saw was, a percentage of your class was attendance. Like some professors like doing that, like 5 to 10% of your grade was just showing up. But like how effective is that? That's just you showing up. It's not really making you inclined to actually absorb the information. So things like applications like Kahoot in class and stuff like that, I think that's a good way to start thinking about how can we actually effectively engage students, right? Because people like competition, and quizzes are fun, and at the same time you're actually unconsciously learning. You're not really thinking of it as like a chore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is figuring out why should students attend, right? I mean, we in our space we have users who don't really teach lectures anymore, right? Because what's the point of meeting on a Zoom lecture, right? There's not much interaction happening anyways.
Yeah, you can just pre-film it, honestly.
Yeah. And I think that this move towards pre-recorded learning content is really valuable because it allows people to work through it at their own pace, especially with time differences and all. You no longer have to get everybody in the same room not even the same room, sorry, the same virtual room to engage with that content. And that's hugely important because you'll have people who are in a I know folks who have to get up at 3-4 in the morning to attend a math lecture, and frankly it's ridiculous, right? They turn on their camera, as you mentioned, for 5 minutes to tick the box on attendance, and they record it. So what do we do during that class time to make it engaging, to make it actually worth attending? And I think that's almost the sea change that really has to happen in education, particularly higher ed, where we no longer look at class as information delivery time, but instead as collaboration time. And this is something that I really hope will stick in a more meaningful way for years to come, not just while we are living through COVID.
Yeah, and I think instructors, at least the feedback we've gotten, is that they're starting to care about this a lot more too. Because back in the pre-COVID days, I would say back in the day like it's so long ago, it sure feels that way.
Yeah, it feels that way, right?
But pre-COVID, I mean, when you're attending in-person class, I think instructors don't really think about lectures and like how do we engage students, because you have discussion or paired with it, or you could just even physically see like students looking at your presentation and you can tell if they're engaged or not. So now I think instructors are caring and educators are caring a lot more about engagement, because they also feel like they're talking to a wall, and it's not fun. Like if you truly love teaching, I think as an educator, as a teacher, you want to see that your time spending putting all this lecture, these slide decks, these lessons together, that it's actually being received, right?
Yep.
So I think, here at Coding Rooms, we're talking with industry professionals, professors and such, so we can work out, at least on our platform, some integrated ways to easily set up these sort of engagement metrics, as well as different activities that can be built into the tool.
Yeah, that's hugely important for not only the remainder of remote learning, which could be quite a while, but also when we get back in the classroom.
Yeah, definitely. So, with that being said, do you want to kind of get into just sort of your thoughts of the week, or?
Sure, yeah.
So smart devices aren't that smart. That's our thought of this week.
Yeah. And this ties, might be a little abstract or whatnot, but this ties quite closely into what we're doing here at Coding Rooms. Today, actually, shortly before filming this podcast, I turned on my iPad that I use for our podcast notes, and I started writing with my Apple Pencil, and sure enough, it wasn't connected. And so I went through a 15-minute odd fiasco of trying to pair my Apple Pencil with my iPad, which I successfully accomplished prior to the beginning of the podcast. But it struck a chord with me, right? Something that I frequently consider is, we're all in the business of building smart applications. We want to make the lives of our users easier. But frankly, smart is almost a placeholder for assumptions or for decisions that are no longer yours. So in many ways, every time we get something that's smart, we actually have things that are taken away from us. We have decisions that are taken away from us. We have functionality, features that are ripped away from us when we pay to upgrade our software or our hardware tooling. And one of the things that I want to mention with coding rooms is that we do a lot to find the balance between automation, smart, in air quotes, if you will, tooling that can make certain assumptions for you, but at the same time, how do we make sure that you as the instructor have full deterministic control over the tool, right? Is it your tool, or are you the tool's user? Or the
yeah, I think
tool,
I know, I totally agree with you on that. I think it's really just about being able to customize to a certain extent, but also having clever automation.
Exactly.
Because once you form a reliance and something doesn't work, like your Apple Pencil, it's just one more thing to add to the long list of annoyances in this very tough time.
Exactly.
Or just even just a normal day, because like you think, like, you invested money, you have trust in the product or the software, and the one time it doesn't work is usually the time that you think it's the most important. So like,
it's right before a live event.
Exactly. So it's just really about being smart and being transparent with our user base as well, right? We want to build that trust with you guys, and we also want to make sure that the tool is easily customizable and that it's also easy to use.
Yeah. Exactly. 100%. So with that, I think we're just about ready to close our second podcast. I'd like to personally thank all of the folks who joined us live, as well as the ones who will join us afterwards in the recorded format. We welcome your feedback. You can reach us at hello@codingrooms.com. You can check us out at codingrooms.com and get your free trial. And there's also a live chat where you can reach out to us directly. So with that, I'll say goodbye from me and the rest of the team at Coding Rooms, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.